We continue with the discussion of these literary terms. Now, today we'll be discussing what is poetic diction. So, poetic diction is actually the art of beautiful words, right? So, you can understand it in this way that it is the deliberate choice of words, phrases, and stylistic elements that elevate the language beyond the ordinary speech. Okay, so this is, you can call it as the deliberate use or choice of words, phrases, and other stylistic elements. Stylistic elements, there are figurative elements of language, like you have studied already metaphors, similes, personification, and all these things, right? So you are deliberating using use you are deliberately uses you are deliberately using these words, phrases, and stylistic elements to make the language uh, different and to make it higher than the ordinary day-to-day language or speech. And why do you do it? Because you want to create that musical, emotional, and imaginative effect. Okay, which is actually a purpose of poetry. So this is what distinguishes poetry from your prose or everyday communication. So poetic diction, you can understand it in simple ways: the use of words, phrases, and other stylistic elements like figures of speech, uh, and what do you call them, metaphors, similes, and all, to make the ordinary speech special. Okay, why do you want to do that? Because you want to create a kind of musical and emotional as well as imaginative effect on the reader. So that is how it is different from the everyday speech or everyday communication. So if you trace back its historical roots, then you will go back to Aristotle's Poetics in the ancient Greece. And it was later popularized in the 18th century by romantic poets like Wordsworth and Coleridge, okay, who debated what language poetry should have. In fact, Wordsworth, he favored, a simple, natural language. That is, you might have gone through this debate between these two in Biographia Literaria during your this course on literary criticism. So Wordsworth, he tried to revolutionize poetry. In his lyrical ballads, he sets out a principle that the poet should choose simple, natural language of the common man rather than a decorated or a grand diction that was prevalent during that particular era, the particular period. So uh, uh, this is the viewpoint of Wordsworth. Now, in everyday example, you can say that if you say that the golden glow of dusk kissed the mountains, so that means it is sunrise. The golden glow of the dusk kissed the mountain. That means it is a sunset, and you can write it simply that it was sunset time. But in poetic language, in poetic diction, you use metaphors, you use figures of speech to make it look extraordinary, to make it look delightful, to make it more imaginative, more emotionally appealing. So that's what poetic diction is. That is deliberate use of words, figures of speech, that is stylistic elements, and sentences which elevate the normal diction into a kind of more imaginative, more emotionally appealing language. So that is the meaning of poetic diction, right? So next is poetic justice. This is a very important term, and this term was coined by Thomas Rhymer, and was a 17th century English critic. And what is the belief? You can see the scales hanging there. So poetic justice means, uh, uh, you know, uh, when narrative outcomes feel morally satisfying. What is that moral satisfaction? It is. that the good characters they receive their rewards and the villains face appropriate consequences, or villain face those the result of their villainous acts. So this is how literature tries to restore balance, that is through poetic justice. So I hope you understood. This term was coined by Thomas Rhymer, a 17th century English critic who believed that literature had a moral duty. What was the moral duty? To reward virtue and punish vice. That is what all of us, there is our conscience also, want to restore that balance. And that is why when you watch movies and all, so when a villain is being beaten up or when a villain suffers, then your sense of that justice, that you start enjoying that moment. And similarly, when a virtuous fellow is being punished or is being dishonored, then you feel the pain. But when that moral justice is restored, when right thing is done to the right person, that is the villain, he faces appropriate consequences, and the good characters or the virtuous characters, they receive their rewards. So this is a sense, this is what is called as poetic justice, means moral balance in storytelling. Now, examples are Shakespeare's King Lear, where these two cruel sisters, uh, Regan and Goneril, they destroy each other through their own treachery, through their own deceit. But the virtuous one, that is Cordelia, she because she represents purity and justice, so she is rewarded in the end. So this is how evil contains the seeds of its own destruction. That is how evil destroys evil. And that is how virtue is rewarded, purity and innocence is rewarded in the end. And in everyday life, there are many examples when a dishonest colleague or friend of yours is actually caught uh, uh, red-handed and face the consequences for their cruelty. So that is what you can recognize as poetic justice, right? So next term is poetic license. Poetic license is actually a kind of license. You know what is license? You too might have a driving license. So license means you can drive a vehicle depending upon the type of license you have. So that is the freedom that you can now drive a vehicle, right? So similarly, poetic license means creative freedom. What is it? If you go back to its root, then it comes from Latin. Latin, that means the poet's freedom. Okay. Uh, now, now the writers or the poets, they have got a license kind of thing. They can bend grammar, facts, or reality's rule for that artistic effect and emotional impact. So that is what the poetic license or creative freedom means. That means a writer is not bound by the rules, by the rules of grammar, facts, or reality, because the main purpose of creating an artistic work is to provide those aesthetic appeal and a feeling of satisfaction. So a writer has uh, that license, or you can call it the freedom, that he or she can bend those grammar rules. Suppose the last word is not rhyming correctly, and the writer wants to produce that rhyming effect. So what he does is he may change the verb, he may change the noun, and he may even change the spelling, or he may even change the facts or realities rule. So, because the ultimate purpose of uh, creative expression is to provide delight and satisfaction, right? So, But it should not, finally there is a very fine line. It should not be too much so that it becomes a kind of muddled kind of expression where no one understands anything, right? It shouldn't be that you defy all the grammatical rules, or then it will become a kind of a confused, kind of chaotic kind of writing where nobody understands anything. So it can be, this license or this freedom can be taken, but it has got its limitations as well. It cannot be that you defy all the rules or everything. Then uh, obviously that piece of writing will be nothing but a junk, right? So in Shakespeare, he was the one who innovated, and he has given a large number of words to English vocabulary. He invented words like eyeball and bedazzled. So he frequently changed the word order uh, to for that rhythm. So it, that's why this thing required the genius of a great man like Shakespeare, because you need to have that courage to try something new. And when the touch of this genius uh, you know met these things, these new things, these innovations, then it became a creation. Nobody dared to change those things later. So that's how a lot of new words have come into English vocabulary through Shakespeare's innovation. This that is creative freedom. Okay, in modern life, you can look for examples like filmmakers. They use poetic license when they accelerate time or enhance reality. You might have seen science fictions, sci-fi movies where you are taken 1,000 years ahead, or you are taken back in time through time machine. So this is how uh, these writers, they have that creative freedom uh, to uh, you know uh, experiment with these things. Next is prose. Prose, though all of you know what is prose and how prose is different from poetry. So the difference, I think you have understood in the previous examples when we were talking about poetic diction. So there also the difference becomes clear. Prose, it comes from Latin prosoporatia. That means straightforward speech. Okay, which speech which is ordinary written, or the spoken language, which normally we people converse in, like we talk to each other in simple words, in simple appearing words, simple sentences without any rhythm or rhyme, right? So it's not that when you are going somewhere and you ask someone that where are you going, so you don't start singing, and you don't start rhyming those words like tum kahan ja rahe ho. So that means that is rhythm and rhyme, that normal day-to-day speech. It is prose. And most of the writings which constitute of novels, essays, journalism, and your newspapers and your everyday communication, that is prose. So someone has compared prose and poetry like this: that if you compare walking to prose, then poetry is dance, right? So you can understand the difference between the two, walking and dancing. Dancing requires rhythms that require uh, uh, a kind of symphony or synchronization with the music, the moves, the body. There has to be some kind of rhythm, and there has to be some kind of beat. But walking is just an ordinary exercise which everyone takes up on a day-to-day basis. So this is the difference between prose and poetry. Examples, there are many: Charles Dickens, David Copperfield, the finest example of prose at its finest, which is rich, detailed, and emotionally powerful, without any poetic meter. There is no rhyme, rhythm, and meter in his writing, but still you find it charming. You find it emotionally powerful. That is Charles Dickens' greatness. Okay, so everything around us, whether it is a news report, letter, text messages, day-to-day conversation, so it comes under the broad, broader heading called prose. Okay, so I hope you understood the difference. And the next is rhyme. Rhyme, it is the music of words, you can call. And this comes from French rhyme, uh, which is further related to Latin word rhythmus, and which means when words end with the same or similar sound. When the word, when the when a sentence or a phrase uh, in poetry in a poetry ends with the same poetry or prose, also prose can also be rhymed. Okay, when words end with the same sound, we are not talking about same spelling, we are talking about the sound. So that creates a rhythmic effect, and that is called a rhyme that looks pleasant to our ears, right? And rhyme is just similar sounding words at the end of a line or a sentence. For example, whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village though. Okay, so no and though. They are rhyming. The end words, they are end rhymed. There's two lines, they are end rhymed. And daily rhymes, you might have gone through those uh, rhymes like twinkle, twinkle, little star. How I wonder what you are in your childhood. So star and R. And daily also you find a lot of uh, advertising slogans like no pain, no gain, right? So rhymes, they are used purposely. Purposely, why? To create that pleasant effect on the ear, and also that is for easy memorization also. Okay, so this is right. So the last term which we'll discuss today is Roman Clef. That means uh, a secret key. A secret key. Now, uh, again, it comes from the French, and a literary, where a literary form, maybe a fictional work like a novel, in which real people and events hide behind fictional names. मतलब समझने का है कि स्टोरी तो बताया गया जैसे फिक्शनल है, लेकिन जो कैरेक्टर्स हैं वो कहीं ना कहीं रियल लाइफ से है, बट देयर नेम्स हैव बीन चेंज्ड देयर, राइट? सो दैट बिकम्स a novel with a key. Okay, and it was popularized in 17th century France and 20th century English literature. For example, Animals Farm. In Animals Farm, there is a disguise of the Russian Revolution and Stalin's rule. Okay, as a farmyard tale. Okay, Animal Farm, you have pigs and other animals there, but in fact, it is a kind of satire on the Russian Revolution. Okay, every character represents real historical figures. Okay, if you get a chance to read this book, then you will come to know that how some character represents Stalin and others represent some other characters who in real life. Their names have been changed in the fiction, but in fact they represent some real person in the real life. So that is what is known as novel with a key or roman éclat. Okay, so now last finally we'll sum up uh, what these terms mean. Poetic diction, it means the language of the poetry, where you elevate language through uh, knowingly knowingly by using certain order of words or choice of words, right? You use stylistic elements, words or phrases which elevate language from the ordinary speech. That is called poetic diction. Why do you do that? In order to create that aesthetic effect, in order to evoke those emotions, in order to expand your imagination. So you use figurative language, you use metaphors, you use similes and all these things, so that uh, it 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 appeals to the emotion, to the imagination of the reader. So that is what poetic diction is, and that is how it is different from the normal day-to-day speech. And next, what we discussed was poetic license. That is a kind of creative freedom to the author, to the writer, so that he or she can bend reality to bring in those elements which are required, okay, in the writing, for in order to create rhyme, rhythm, or other such things. He or she may bend grammatical rules. He or she may bend twist those real life facts, okay, just to uh, fulfill the need of that artistic creative expression. Next is rhyme. Rhyme, I hope you understood the last word sounding similar. And poetic justice, it is some kind of moral satisfaction, or in which the evil is punished and the virtuous is rewarded. And prose, a very simple thing, the day-to-day writing or speaking, in which there are no elements of uh, uh, poetry, poetic language, where we speak in simple and direct manner. That is prose. And lastly, Roman Clef, the novel with a key, in which a real life or real incident is disguised as fictional, okay, with some other name.